Welcome back, everybody. This is Hutch from Hutch High Perf. Did you like this video? Are you subscribed? Now's the time. On this episode, oh yeah, that's right, it's in. Let's get started on the transmission. Let's get this knocked out. Oh, hydromatic division of GMC. I like it. All right, let's hop this pan off. Decided to change the pan out for one with a drain plug, because there's nothing I hate more than having to crawl underneath the car, change the transmission fluid. And you know how these things work. You loosen up the ends and it just pours everywhere, and you hope to catch most of it until it's empty enough that you can just take the rest off. I hate that. So when I get the opportunity, I like to put drain plug on these, just to make it that much easier. I don't know why they never did this in the first place. Also had a question one time, why don't you use air tools? Got a compressor, seen you use them, seen you use the air nozzle. Well, for one thing, the noise drowns out the mic, and honestly, I wanted to try to demonstrate that just about everything that you need to do, you can just do with hand tools. Yeah, it takes longer, right? If I had a gun, I'd be like zip, 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 all the way around and be done. I don't know. Maybe I'm just extending the amount of content I'm making. Now, it just comes down to the fact that some guys don't have compressors, don't have air tools. And then they feel like, oh, I can't do that because I don't have everything that I need. All you need is will and brains. Everything else will bend to those two things. Learn enough and do enough. That's all it takes. Okay, let's see if I can pop this loose without messing up the gasket. Because right now I don't have a gasket, so that'll put a stop to things until I run out and grab one. All right, that is stuck down. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean this up. There's like a little trace bit of transmission fluid here and there. He sent it back to me empty, and basically I'm just going to make sure that this gasket is cleaned up. Might put like a little smear of silicone on the new pan, and then we'll be ready to go. So you may have heard me say this on more than one occasion, but don't go crazy with the silicone. It is not necessary. You need a film, not a bead, not some giant thick thing. Most of that's going to push out. And I've seen oil pickups, insides of stuff where someone went hog wild with the silicone, and the stuff just goes, it pushes out. When you tighten it down and you see it squeeze out the outside of the pan or whatever it is, you think that's the only side it squeezes out? It's going inside whatever you're trying to seal, and it goes everywhere. And it gets into everything. It might stay as one big hunk or a bead on the inside, but eventually that'll break off. And then you've got these hunks of solid silicone just going through whatever system you're trying to keep from blowing up or leaking or doing whatever. It's unnecessary when a light film will have the same results and not end up going everywhere. Pan with a drain plug. I love it. I love it. All right, see if my bolts are dry. Okay, I think we've let these things sit long enough. I can be impatient, so it's a good chance these probably should have sat a little longer, but they're going in. All right. Never you end up using a torque wrench on these. I snug it down till I know I got that feel like I like it. So now I can flip this back over off of the engine stand and let's get the torque converter in. All right, here is the converter. This is ATI 10-inch Super Street Fighter. So I got to do a couple things. Get this ready to go in. All right. Calls for 1 quart of trans fluid into the converter. They're very specific. This had to be red trans fluid. We're also going to hit this seal. Make sure that is nice and wet with trans fluid while this thing is glugging and eating this up. Let's get a little on that. Then we'll put a little on the threads and I think we'll be done. On the threads, on the splines. Yeah. All right, just a little bit left to pour in here. Also lubed up the outside of the shaft where this is going to feed in the seal, just to make sure we don't damage anything, cut the seal, do anything stupid. I'd hate to have to pull this back out because I damaged the seal up. So, all right, nothing left to do but get this thing in. So, let me wipe this down. Get a little bit of that excess fluid off the bottom here. So, if you've ever watched any of these videos, when it comes to putting torque converter in, no, I'm spilling some fluid already. All right, you have to get this thing clicked all the way in and seated. So it takes a little bit of, these things can be a bit finicky. Ah, there we go. So if you watch enough installation videos, you know that it'll tell you, oh, it's like 2, maybe 3 clicks to get it in. And if you heard the two that I got were in close succession to each other, and I'm pretty sure got it in as far as it's going to go. But the manufacturer says you need to check it against the bell housing face. It should be 1 inch, which is what I got to the mounting surface. Yeah, so we're in. All right. I do like these engine stands with the legs splayed out. It makes it much more stable. The issue is you've got the splayed out legs of the engine hoist and then the splayed out legs of the stand, and they really don't want to work together. But it beats the alternative, because the old stands, it was like a T with just one leg sticking out, and those things you could, unfortunately, if you were bad luck, you could like tip one of those things over, and it's no good. So I do like the stability. It makes it a pain trying to get this stuff up and out with the legs the way they are. Ah, what a pain. All right, let's get that back off. Actually, you know, when I was a younger man, I'd have an engine hoist, engine crank so high in the air, it was like crazy. And I'd get underneath it, roll around, yank on stuff, chains flying, engine shaking. Wouldn't even think twice about it. Nowadays, I guess I'm feeling my mortality a little bit more than I used to. I'm not too fond of that, so the closer things get to the ground, the better off I feel. All right, well, time to marry these two guys up. Need a little bit of height. I think that'll just about do it. Oh, look at that. Yeah. All right, let's throw some bolts in. All right, let's run these down. ARP bolts. It's got a 7/16 reduced head on it, so makes it a little nicer to squeeze past some of this stuff. It's not bad. All right, so let's get that. I can get these outsides fed in. The rest should be a piece of cake. So when you do one of these, last thing you want to do, if there's some type of gap in between your bell housing and your block, is to just try to get a couple threads and then just crank it down and then force the two together. Guaranteed you're going to end up regretting that decision if you crack your bell housing. So if it's not going together smooth, figure that part out before you start trying to do other shenanigans. Because it's just aluminum. I've seen people crack bell housings before. You want to talk about a sad day. Whew. These all get 45 foot-pounds. All right, let's get this fella up in the air, and then we will check our torque converter engagement. Make sure that is right on target. All right, now I have to admit, in my youth, I never checked this, ever. I would slap the converter into the trans, bolted up the engine, smack the converter forward, bolted up, I was done. So this is actually a critical measurement. So you've got this gap
in between the torque converter and the flex plate when the converter is fully seated, pushed all the way in as far as it can, and you have that 1-inch clearance between the bell housing and the converter. So the manufacturer says that that gap should be 1/8 to 3/16, which is roughly 125 thousandths to 187 thousandths. So I used a feeler gauge, a bunch of them, and I checked that, and mine measures out to 191. So what I'm going to do is use a 60 thousandths washer in between the mounting pad and where the flex plate goes in, and that is going to decrease that gap and give me the proper clearance, which would be just over 1/8. So what happens is this converter, when it's all the way seated, it's too close to the pump. So the natural movement of the flex plate and the crankshaft during different situations is going to make that, plus you've got the the swell on the torque converter will do the same thing. It shortens that gap up. So if it's seated all the way in and there's no gap at all, that pressure will push against the trans pump and you'll destroy the transmission pump. Same thing as if this gap is too wide and you have to push it way out, that puts the splines for the pump like right at the end of the splines, and you can shear the end of the splines off. So it's got to be right in that sweet spot. So when we put the washer in and put the bolts in, and then we'll start bolting this up. So let's swing that around to the mounting point. I know where my hole is. Let's see. Yeah, that's mounted up. Let's get my 60 thou washer in here. See if I can get the bolt to grab it. Get that on the bolt. Yeah. All right. Now push my converter forward. Start the threads. And leave it a little loose. And I've got to rotate it around and do the other two. Once all three are in, and then I'll snug them down. Then I will go back one at a time and I will use a little tiny bit of blue Loctite and then torque them down based on the size of the bolt, 55 foot-pounds. That's 2. There's number 3. Last but not least, all right, ready for the car. So the G-body frame is made for multiple engine setups. Olds V8, Chevy V8, V6. So there are tons of holes for where different motor mount orientations could go. So when I took this apart, I made myself a little drawing and I circled the holes where I knew the engine mounts had to go back into, because there's so many of them, and I knew after having this out for so long I may question myself on where they go. So that's how that goes. So the engine mounts are in place. I guess there's nothing left to do to swing the motor in there. So, can anyone spot my ignorance? There it is. See the engine mount? See that hole back there? See where the wrong engine mount placement is? Okay, it's not too hard. It's 2 bolts either side. Move the mounts, bolt it up. Well, well, it is amazing what you do when you do it right. I had lowered it right in the position. Literally, I changed the engine mounts and I had to put them over the mounting pads to get them to fit. Right in there. Now we just lower the other side down till I can see that that one is mounted in the right spot. Should just fall right over to it. Let's see what that did. Kind of working blind. I'm on the wrong side over here. I got enough wiggle room. I think I can actually, I'll just tilt this forward. Oh. No, I'm going to need to put a little height on the back of the tail of the trans. I think that might have done the trick. Oh! Yay! All right. I'm just going to leave it right there because it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I am tired. But it is in. It's in. Okay. Well, here's something. I said it was tight. It is tight, tight. That valve cover, there's not a lot of room. Okay. So I'll figure that out when the time comes. And it may involve jacking up that side of the engine just to get the valve cover off. So who knows? I'll figure that out when the time comes. Fiddly-dee, that's for another day. And as you can see, because I did it by myself, I smacked the firewall and chipped a little paint. But that's no big deal. All that is paint. I can sand and paint. That's no big deal. Well, there she is. In place, home, for good, hopefully. Anyway, I've really been enjoying doing this project, I got to tell you. Here's the thing, though. This would have been a lot easier if I had a second person. But sticking to the theme of what I was trying to get across, I am doing this. It's one man on one side of a 2-car garage, no lift, a couple of power tools and hand tools. And you can do everything you want to do as long as you put your mind to it. Anyway, this is Hutch from Hutch High Perf. Hope you guys are having a good one. Take it easy.